Thank you, Tim. And boy, what a matchup here, Cedric. We've got two Brazilian world champions, although those world championship victories came almost 20 years apart from each other. Carlos Romao kind of blazing that trail way back in 2002, putting himself and in many ways Brazil on the map for Magic. And then Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa having taken the torch at some point there and really kind of ran with it, it must be said, our most recent world champion.
The thing I think, Marshall, when I see the deck that was brought here by Paulo, because he's unquestionably, top 3 all time, I just go, all right, what am I missing? Because he's the only one doing this, and I'm just thinking, is he just that far ahead? And he did mention that he doesn't think it's a ladder deck. He thinks it's specific to this weekend. And hey, the meta game that he cares about is specifically for this weekend.
That's right. And I have to say, you mentioned it briefly when you were breaking down the decks with Tim, but Croxa, I mean, when your opponent's milling you out willingly, like you need to have one of those cling to dusts around to get rid of it, or else they can just cast it every turn. Like you're just filling up their graveyard, not only with fodder, but also with actual Croxa cards. So like it is a real problem to have, a card taken out of your hand every other turn and you're losing 3 life. And sometimes they can do it twice. I mean, it gets really nasty. And to me, that's the card I'm focusing on the most here is that because, look at this Ruin Crab from Carlos Romao and Paulo. Until that last card gets milled, this is a benefit to him. He wants this to happen.
Totally agree. Yeah. It's good with his Liliana. It's good with Crux. It's good with everything that you're mentioning here. So these are things that he wants to see happen. I agree with you.
So we'll see how it ends up playing out. It looks like he hasn't hit one just yet, but Robber of the Rich gets to attack. Generally speaking, the Dimir deck is going to be a lot richer than Paulo's. His deck plays kind of a different game plan where he's not really having a whole bunch of cards in here. Here comes Timorak Calls the Dead. I mean, look at this. He wants to mill himself.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder.
Oh, another Ruin Crab.
So this is kind of interesting, right? Because Paulo wants to mill himself. He uses his graveyard as a resource. Carlos is on the Ruin Crab version of the deck. So it's like, all right, so we're going to have this little weird mill showdown where maybe there's too much milling going on here. And then all of a sudden, Paulo runs out of cards way faster than he expected because there's Ox of Agonis as well.
Mm-hmm. And you see he's hit actually both of them there with that set of mills from the Ruin Crab. So now Paulo's going to start to see that he's got his choice on what to do. And we're really going to get to see what this is all about here, Cedric, because if Paulo can win this game by getting back some combination of Ox and Cruxa, then we'll see that his game plan was very solid and that was what he should have been doing. And if he can't, well, then the results will point us to the inevitable conclusion that Ruin Crab is better than Cruxa. And that's the only takeaway we could possibly
That's the only thing that we could draw from any of this.
Yeah, so we're going to learn a lot from this game, I'll tell you that.
So one thing that's been interesting about this standard format, of many since the banning of Omnath and Lucky Clover and Escape to the Wilds, is watching these Dimir Rogues decks kind of perform. The thing that stood out to me is a lot of people have just gone like, okay, we're going to go to escape cards, which makes total sense, right? They're milling you. If they're playing Crab or not, they're still putting cards in your graveyard because they play cards like Into the Story. But what's the best escape card that you can go to? Is it Croxa? Is it Ox? Is it Chainweb Arachnir? I think that one's been proven to be less imposing over time. The answer to that question, Marshall, may just straight up be, it is Croxa, and that is why I'm playing this deck. It's the best way to take advantage of the fact that you are milling me.
Certainly the most obvious, right? And you need to play these games out to really kind of, like you said, like Chainweb Arachnir looks amazing and it's fine, right?
It's just so dead average.
Right, exactly. But, I think that when you play with the Ox or you play with the Cruxes, you'll start to see, oh, okay, this is working. Like this is really making life difficult for my opponent. And I get to keep doing this every turn. And I think we're going to see something like that here from Paulo. Of note, when it does come to Cling to Dust, Carlos Romao is only playing 1 in the main and 1 in the board. We have seen some of the other players playing 4 between main and board, but Carlos is just on for 1.
Well, he's doing a good job so far of containing Croxa. You saw a Bloodchief's Thirst take care of it once it resolved once, and then we're also seeing a Drown the Lock counter it as well. But over the course of this game, right, I think we're just going to see Like the cards that Paulo draws, I'm not going to say are irrelevant, but it's just going to be a lot of, all right, this again, Croxa again, Croxa again, Croxa again, until you can't take it anymore, assuming that you keep milling me.
Really rough here for Carlos Romao, hitting land number 4 now. Getting a little bit of mill going there, but again, infinite food for the now triple cruxes in the graveyard here for Paulo. And Carlos just has to pass the turn back. Paulo ended up killing one of the crabs with Blood Chief's Thirst last turn. I think he did it just to get it out of the way to keep the beats going here, as they were actually doing a pretty good job of blocking these zombies and the robber.
Tough spot here for Carlos too, as you mentioned, because another reason I'll say is because this Into the Story, only 1 blue mana. Having enough cards in the graveyard has actually been pretty easy, but a single blue mana means that he cannot cast his powerful card drawer. And now you may have just seen the casting cost on that card change from 4 to 7 because Paulo has escaped so many times with Croxa.
That's exactly what happened, Cedric. It's another downside for this Rogues player. Has to somehow fight through the Cruxes, feeding it, and then also dealing with it, exiling a bunch of the graveyard too. It's really a problem. And meanwhile, your life total plummets. And, well, Paul is able to apply enough pressure here to force blocks on top of it, really make Carlos have a whole lot of things. And as you can see, Carlos is down to just 1 7 mana into the story left in hand at this point.
I don't think he's going to play.
I think he's hoping to draw an island here.
Yeah. And there it is. Hello.
Boy, how did you set that one up, Cedric? You're trying to prove that card's not worthy. There you go.
My
goodness sakes.
Wind Robber in the house.
Merfolk Wind Robber to seal the deal. And as you could see, Carlos could not concede quick enough. That card barely made it into his hand off of the draw animation before he was done with that one. Now we get to see how things change, though, because as you can see, you do see some things start to come in here. Extinction Event can do good work, exiling key threats and making sure that they don't come back. A second copy of Cling to Dust. There's a bunch of different ways that Carlos can try to go here to try to shore up this matchup. Let's see what he ends up boarding in.
Well, Clean to Dust is, of course, going to be a good one against the Croxes. And this is why what's kind of interesting, we've talked about this Clean to Dust count, and you did right at the top of 1 main, 1 board here for Carlos, where we saw with Jensen and Duke, who submitted 74 of the same 75, 2 main, 2 board. And it was a little bit strange to me to kind of see that. But I'll say this, if people are on kind of the Paulo wavelength, which we know he's the only person on that for this weekend of, Croaks is the way to go. Well, these Dimir Rogues decks do have an answer in Cling to Dust. Right? They do have a tool available to them at their disposal to say, hey, no, you're not going to do that to me. It's just that Carlos doesn't have that many copies where some other players have access to the full 4 throughout the 75.
I'm going to look over at Paulo's list. He has 1 Cling to Dust in his sideboard. And that can be key as well, because remember, you can cast Cling to Dust targeting your opponent's Cling to Dust. And if you can, with only 2 available for Carlos, who, by the way, just looks distraught about the matchup here. Him looks so anxious and frustrated. I think he feels like there's just nothing he can do. He just looks like he's on T-level midnight down there.
Well, there's one thing I'll say. I like that. T-level midnight's good. Good offense reference. There's one thing I will say that when I was playing professionally at the early stages of last decade, which feels like forever ago, when you test, you have a finite number of time. And so I imagine Carlos and plenty of other people who were getting ready for this league weekend were like, okay, let's try to figure out what the best Urian thing is. Okay, there's like six different ways you can build that deck, and you got to test it against the other Urian decks if you want to prepare for the mirror. And then it's like, okay, let's figure out what the best build of Dimir Rogues is. Do we play Crab? Do we play Wind Robber? Typhoon versus Luris? Now, let's test against the other Dimir Rogues decks. Now let's run those Rogues decks up against the Urian decks, right? And that can consume multiple days, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so how much time does that leave you to test against what Paulo's playing?
Yeah,
and say, let me figure out the best way to approach this matchup and what matters here, what matters and what doesn't. And Carlos is world class, as everybody that's playing this weekend, but time is finite no matter how good you are.
That's right. Yeah, that's a fantastic point. It really is, because this deck that Paulo's playing, a lot of times people play a off the radar or even just a full on, well, I guess it's called a rogue deck. they tend to see that there's an advantage as the player may not understand what you're doing or may have not prepared properly. But that second part's really important. And that's what you're saying here is that, look, there's a decent chance that Carlo didn't run it against a whole lot of these decks. Now, it's not that he's not going to be able to figure out what's going on the fly here. He knows what's up. The problem is it sucks for him, even if he's a good enough player to recognize what's going on fundamentally here. He's also good enough to recognize that that's awful news for him because the fundamentals are stacked against him pretty strongly.
And meanwhile, on the other side, and I'll add this to this aspect of this conversation. So sometimes, in let's say a Grand Prix level event or something else, you might see someone who's not Paulo Vitor Damo playing this deck, and it's like, hey, this is like my kind of rogue homebrew build of Rakdos Midrange, right? And like I've been preparing for this particular Grand Prix, this particular event, and like I'm pretty good, and I feel like I've got the matchups down, but whatever, right? Might have a couple different cards that are off, whatever. In this instance, you have your current reigning and defending world champion playing the rogue deck and has been saying, I am going to pinpoint in on Dimir rogues and Urian. And it's not like it's not a random person playing a random deck. This is Paulo Vitor Damo we're talking about. He's the rogue player, not rogues, the rogue player in the tournament. That's right. Horrifying.
It stands out, doesn't it? It really does. It's not common that you see Paulo be the black sheep in the format who has decided to play something different, right? It's usually he's got a really well-tuned, well-chosen version of the most powerful deck in the format.
Because one thing I never hear Paulo say, and this is kind of a thing that's said around the Magic community, and I'm guilty of this as well, is, I don't want to play the mirror. I feel like I might get outplayed or, it's RNG or anything like that. And Paulo's just like, no, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to beat you. I love interaction and I'm better than you. And he's not going to say it in those terms, but to see him kind of sidestep and say, I don't want to do the Urian thing. I don't want to do the Dimir Rogues thing. I want to do this thing. It's scary stuff, especially if he's right. And 6 wins so far says that he's probably right.
It's really funny because you do hear people say that, right? I don't want to have to play the mirror all day. Well, the reason why they say that is because of Paulo. They don't want to play against Paulo in a mirror all day because they know he's better than them.
Yep.
So he doesn't have to worry about that, I guess. He's one of the.
I don't want to play him in any mirror ever.
Yeah, no way.
No, thank
Not
you.
Interested. All right, are we going to see our first escaped card here? You can see everything loaded up in the graveyard here for Paulo. There's the Skyclave. What is it? Shade? Is that what it's called? I forgot for a second.
Skyclave Shade.
Yeah, the Shade, and then of course there's the Cruxa, and even access to the Ox of Agonis if Paulo would like. And there it is.
Ooh. Oh, there goes the grip.
Yeah. Reload. It's also. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, there's the Skyclave Shade coming in. No kicker, but still 8 power on the battlefield. And that graveyard nicely stocked as well. And again, that there's a real issue here if you're Carlos Romao. Because one of your primary game plans does involve milling out your opponent, yet your opponent is playing multiple cards that effectively mill themselves. And there's a major strategic conflict when that happens.
Now, something actually really interesting to note that, for whatever reason, just never really dawned on me. Ox of Agonis escapes with a +1/+1 counter on it.
Yep.
Here's looking at you, Heartless Act.
Oh, that's rude. Oh,
because I keep thinking of the cards that I think of like Uro and Cruxa, and like some of the cards do escape with +1/+1 counters, and some of them don't. And I was like, oh right, that's right. That's not a 4/2. It's a Heartless Act looks bad right now.
God, it just looks like such an extra line of text, right? You're just like, yeah, whatever, right? I get a counter. That's not really the point of the card. Boy, does that counter look good now, though. My goodness sakes.
Now, this game is shaping up to be a pretty interesting one here, Marshall, because we're looking at life totals of 11-9. We're definitely in a racing scenario right now because these rogues that Carlos has in the battlefield, I mean, these are big creatures. These are all 3-power flyers at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in this particular game, Carlos Romao, having that Ruin Crab in hand, about the best thing it's going to get done is get discarded to a Cruxa here.
For sure.
This is huge pressure, though, as you see Paulo Vitor Damo understanding that this is a major inflection point for this match. This turn could be the one that decides whether he can win or not. And look at that. Goes for Shatter Skull Smashing to take down one of the Thought Thieves. That actually is going to take a total of 5 power off the battlefield just with that one card.
Really changes the clock and the complexion of this game.
It felt like Carlos, with a timely top deck there of another Thought Thief or something like that, may have been able to piece together a win the next turn. And now he's multiple turns away from winning. I mean, right? It went from being, with a lucky draw, a 1-turn clock, and now he's just staring with a land off the top at a 3-turn clock.
Yep.
Yikes. This is going to be very difficult for Carlos. I have to say, it has been every step of the way. This matchup looks like a complete nightmare from Carlos Romao's perspective. And it's hard to imagine how you even piece together a cohesive game plan here against a deck that basically has the same goal that your deck does in the sense of milling itself.
Yeah, it's a deck that, more than any other deck in the format, actually wants to be milled and can take the most advantage of it.
Here we go. Ruin Crab into Fabled Passage. Is there a turbo mill win possible here? There have been quite a few cards going to the graveyard off of the Thought Thieves that were there at the beginning of the turn.
The one thing
like the clock's a little too quick for that. What do you think, Zed?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think I just saw Carlos hover over Paulo's library. I think the count was 24. So
yep, you're right. 23 now after the draw step. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That is a lot to overcome. That Paulo can get the job done, and getting Carlos from 9 down to 0 before that's going to happen. So that's not going to be a viable game plan here. I mean, at the very least, we see Cruxa in the graveyard, 3 of them in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And that he could just cast one of those for the next 3 turns and probably win the game that way. Because remember, Carlos also has to block here.
Yes.
He doesn't have the luxury of trading life total for time. He needs to both block and he'll be taking 3. That'll leave him with no hand.
Which is not great.
Not a great situation.
Which is not great. All right, so we're going to go robbing the rich, huh?
Is there a land to follow, or is it going to be Timeret Calls the Dead or something? Yeah, it's just going to be everybody in.
Not a bad place to start. Start here, make your opponent react to what your attacks look like, and then you can figure out what your follow-up's going to be, if it is appropriate to go to Timeret Calls the Dead or the big fella in the graveyard.
Boom, Wind Robber doing its thing.
Oh yeah, look at it, just busted.
Just chump blocked and replaced itself. It's going to be a Bone Crusher Giant to follow up, making life even more difficult here for Carlos. If that one were to be removed, it would cost another 2 life, and that's really adding up quickly here. And this is with Paulo still sitting there on the triple Cruxa in the graveyard as well.
Yeah. And now Paulo's starting to get to the point now where I'm not going to say it's going to be easy for him to get to a double Crux a turn, double Escape a turn, but it's, a couple lands away. I don't know if the game will work itself to that point. He might be able to close it out sooner than that, as there's a Drown in the Loch. But one thing
you
I think
pronounce it right.
Oh, excuse me, Drown in the Loch. Was that it? Okay.
Yeah. So don't throw your keys in the lock.
One thing that's an issue here, I will say, is that Paul has played this game in such a fashion where this Cruxa is going to deal 3. Because he's just going to keep attacking, and basically it's like, okay, so you need to play a removal spell to kill one of these creatures, otherwise you're going to die in combat, and then I'm going to escape Crux, and you're going to have no card to discard, and you're going to take 3, right?
Yeah, he's got him coming or going. He also has multiple Cruxes, so even if Carlos Romao were to find a copy of Cling to Dust, it wouldn't matter. And in fact, it's Paulo who found his one copy of it out of the board. Not that it's the key card here, but here comes Cruxa.
And it's kind of the situation, right, where it's like, okay, well, you use your card to counter it, which means you have no cards left in your hand, which means Cruxa the following turn is good, but also in the short term, okay, well, here come my creatures that you don't really have a great answer for.
Right. Here comes Paulo attacking with his 2 creatures.
Should Carlos have gotten Luris back lure us from the companion zone. Well, we'll never know, but he does look a little frustrated there on the bottom. So I don't know if it's T-level midnight, but we know who won.
Yeah, we definitely know who won. That one was not close. Paulo Vitor Rosa with his metagame call, perhaps trying to get one step ahead of the decks that he thought were in response to the main deck. So you've got Yorion as kind of the best deck coming in. A lot of the players chose Dimir Rogues as the answer to Yorion. And by the way, that has proven itself to be a very good decision, as Dimir Rogue seems to be doing very well against the Yorion decks.
Yep.
But did Paulo Vitor Rosa go one step further here with a deck that's good against Rogues and still has game versus Yorion? Because if you could pick the perfect deck for this tournament, Cedric, that is how you would describe it.
Yeah, you always wonder when you make a deck choice like this, are you too far ahead? Are you 2 steps ahead, or are you the appropriate level ahead, right? Yes. And it feels like he might just be on the right step for this weekend, which, big surprise if the world champion got something right. I can't believe it.
Yeah, we were all shocked. So another victory for Paulo Vitor Rosa here on MPL Sunday at the League weekend. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, though, we'll have more magic. Don't go anywhere.
Hello and welcome back, my friends. Tim Willoughby here to let you know that while we've had plenty of action in our virtual feature match area already, there's been all sorts of magic being played all around the world, and we're going to get a chance to show you 2 of the very top players in the game as we join their game 3. We've seen both of them on camera already today, but they're 2 players that everyone enjoys watching. We've got Autumn Burchett from England on one side of things, with Timo Ramp, a deck that has been proving very successful indeed this weekend. On the other side of things, William Jensen, he's got one of the better decks in the field in Dimir Rogues, but has not been able to put up quite the numbers that maybe he would have liked at 3 and 6 thus far. Let's head down to our feature match area for this, the deciding game between Autumn Burchett and William Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. And welcome back. So Autumn Burchett versus William Jensen. As Tim mentioned, we are popping in here on game number 3. Just a few more rounds left in this opening weekend here for these players. And well, things have gone very well for Autumn. Autumn has been smashing. And as you can see for Huey, not so much. 3 wins for William Huey Jensen, 7 coming in here for Autumn. And 7 is really impressive. Remember, this is only against other MPL members as well. And, you talked yesterday about, what would you take at the beginning of the tournament, if I said, okay, you're going to get, 4 wins on day 1 or whatever. Well, 7 wins already is fantastic here for Autumn, just smashing as usual.
Yeah, you gotta love it. And also, I think what's notable as we're going to begin this third game between Team Rampant and Dimir Rogues is that I think maybe some people thought that ramp was not a thing you could be doing anymore, and it's like, no, it's still fine apparently.
That's right. Yeah, we got to see Emma Handy play this yesterday. Today, we've seen Autumn play it a little bit as well, and the deck looks just as good as ever. This particular opening hand for Autumn does not look so great.
Not my favorite.
The triple terror of the peak Shark Typhoon with a couple of extra lands left over. We're going to need to see some type of ramp there for Autumn to really kind of turbo forward. But in the meantime, well, the hand from Huey's not very good either.
Yeah, 2 players with I'll say less than ideal opening hands, but you cycle a Shark Typhoon into a Cultivate, for example, and all of a sudden this hand doesn't just look good, it looks great.
Wow, chat's trying to get me to say that hand is terrible.
No, don't give him that one.
But I'm going to tell them that I'm not Riley, and I will not say that.
There you go. I like that. Stand firm. Be who you are.
Know who you are, right? That's a big key. Hello, Cultivate. There.
Look who's from the future. It's me.
So, perfect for Autumn here as they get to cast the Cultivate here and really kind of set up these next few turns by casting a bunch of terrors and maybe even getting that Genesis Ultimatum going. So this is, a way for Autumn to say, all right, ball's in your court, William Huey Jensen. You figure out some way to stop me now because I am going to be doing this.
Well, it's game time now. Now it's just Haymaker Central. It's just, here's an awesome card. Counter it, kill it, fine. Got another one. One.
This is the simple part of the game for Autumn. Leading up to here, there's a lot of intricate sequencing and things that you need to do for the ramp deck to make sure that you get the colors that you need, that you don't die in the interim. But now at this point, with Huey having done really nothing in this game at all, it's just start slamming these dragons and see if something sticks.
Yep. And I weirdly like when games play out like this, where it's just like, all right, well, here's my thing. And here it is again, and here it is again, and here it is again. And eventually one's going to resolve, or I guess maybe not.
There it is.
Yep.
And this one's going to resolve just as well. And interestingly here, Jensen, no instant speed answer for the Terror of the Peaks. The best that he's going to be able to do is effectively tap out the next turn for Blood Chief's Thirst. And yeah, that's pretty rough.
But it's an answer.
Jensen will be happy that he had the answer. But things starting to get very hot under the collar here for Huey, as Autumn Burchett has been able to apply significant pressure for the past 2 turns, and that will not be letting up this turn either.
So interesting thing now, the question is, do we go towards Gargaroth or we just do Terror of the Peaks again? Both cards are fantastic, of course, but which route do you go?
Terror of the Peaks, by the way, doing good work, even with the 2 removal spells hitting. You see Jensen's down to 14. And those terrors have neither attacked nor had their triggered ability go on the stack outside of the one that says, don't target me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's going to be Elder Gargaroth, so a little bit of a different look this time for Autumn, deciding not to go with the 3rd terror, but rather the first Elder Gargaroth, and then passing the turn back. Oh, that's a Triome and a Salundi Vision in hand for Jensen, leaving him just 1 short of being able to hardcast Shark Typhoon. I don't know how great that is anyway, but when your opponent already has an Elder Gargaroth on the battlefield, but it would have been nice to have that option, that's for sure.
Yeah, and if the hard cast of Shark Typhoon would have been cast, it would have been a blowout because of the mystical dispute that would have countered that. So I think Jensen is in the old rock and a hard place here because no clean answer for the Gargaroth, and that means that Burchett's going to get the opportunity to untap with it and start sending in with the big fella.
Yeah, so this is really key here. Jensen, very aware of mystical dispute, is going to go for Salundi Vision, trying to find, a Heartless Act or something to be able to kill this Gargaroth, particularly before it gets to get into combat and start getting its bonuses going. And Autumn, oh, there's a Heartless Act. Autumn did go in the tank on whether to use Mystical Dispute there, decided not to, and now Heartless Act can go on the stack. Now, Autumn still has the option of using Mystical Dispute here, but it will cost them 3 mana.
Yep.
Still well worth it, as you've got your Elder Gargaroth ready to rumble. It's going to hit for 6 here at the minimum, and then we could see a card go into hand or a beast on the battlefield. I think those are the choices that we're going to be choosing between.
Yeah, not interested in life gain with how this game is shaping up.
Not so much. So let's see if Autumn prefers to build out their board and apply more pressure, or if they feel that they need to, I don't know, hit a land or, get something into hand this turn. First blush, I would assume a beast token, given that there's already a cultivate, and what are you going to do with the card right away? I could see a card if the idea is I'm looking for some way to protect the board that I've got. And it looks like Autumn did decide to go for the card, hit a Triumph.
So you get a Triumph, you can cultivate, get another land, and then set up for a Genesis Ultimatum next turn or something different. Guess you could also try to act like you're bluffing some sort of counterspell here, but I'm not sure how much value there is in doing so.
Kind of interesting decision. You see Autumn is going through all of them.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, Jensen's on easy mode here, tapped out, nothing to think about. Autumn's still in the tank.
I wonder what the decision trees are here.
Could be along the lines of what you said, right?
I guess. Okay, so I don't know how many cards are in Autumn's graveyard right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing I'm thinking is this card 7? Right? If Cultivate resolves, is that card 7 that's in the graveyard? And it is. Okay, because Into the Story's casting cost is less. So if you don't play the Cultivate, there are 6 cards in the graveyard. If you do play the Cultivate, there's 7 in the graveyard, which means the story costs 4. So now Autumn, by casting that Cultivate, has turned that card on.
Okay, so there it is. You figured it out for us, Ed. Great read. And I think that Autumn ultimately decided, if you want to spend 4 mana to resolve an Into the Story, that leaves you very short on reasonable ways to respond, because the most mana that you could have at that point is 3. And that's what happened here. So Jensen fires off Into the Story. Now, will this backfire on Autumn, or is the mana tax, just in the sense that Jensen had to actually, tap this mana on his own turn, going to be enough? And we see the turn get passed back over to Autumn. Autumn will have expected that, given that this is the Rogues deck they primarily play at instant speed.
This is interesting. Do you lead with attacking, or do you lead with a spell? Looks like we're going to lead with attacking, trigger the Gargaroth, peel a card.
Yeah, this is a non-lethal attack currently. But you got to figure if Terror of the Peaks resolves, it's going to be just a nightmare for Jensen if his life total's at 2. And that's not even to say anything of Genesis Ultimatum, which Autumn has been threatening for a couple of turns now. It's just another land into hand. Boom, though. Down to 2 goes William Huey Jensen. And remember, this is a game 3 decider between these two players. Autumn coming in with 7 wins, Jensen with 3. And Autumn looking to maintain their grip on this tournament, having really kind of ran away with it in some ways, putting themselves near the top.
So the calculus here for me, if I'm Autumn, is how do I double spell? Or do I think just a Genesis Ultimatum is good? Now, if I want to double spell, 4, 5, 6, 7, I've got access to 9 mana. So I can go Beanstalk. I can do Fertile Footsteps into Beanstalk Giant.
Yep.
I could do Fertile Footsteps into Terror of the Peaks or Vivian. I can do any of those things. I could lead
I
with Terror of the
assume you
Peaks, I
could
guess.
even do it into the Ultimatum, right?
1, 2, 3. Yeah, no, you're right about that too. So it feels like Fertile Footsteps is the easiest part, and then figuring out what the follow-up is that's not going to resolve, so you care about it the least, is the next question.
Okay, well, there's a very easy decision for William Huey Jensen. Must use that Essence Scatter as the Terror of the Peaks. Basically represents you being dead.
Yeah.
On many different ways. Now we're going to see Fertile Footsteps here from Burchett, and Jensen's going to get to untap again, but currently doesn't look like he's got the tools to get out of this. Oh, there's an end of the story.
Well, that could find the tools, and it looks like we might have Wool Mage's domination here now too. So this is getting a little bit ugly, I think.
This is really interesting, Cedric, because that negate sitting there for the Cruel Ultimatum, or the Vivian in the even. We may have a game here.
Now, Venusaur Giant is pretty darn big, so you might just want to go that direction.
True, especially given that Jensen is looking to start attacking with the Elder Gargaroth to gain life or cards, or start getting the advantage that affords. There we go. Beanstalk Giant on the stack for Autumn Burchett. Currently a 10-10. Cruel Ultimatum, right? How about Genesis Ultimatum?
I was gonna let it slide.
Yeah, I think I'm living in the past here. Said I'm dreaming.
Oh, that's.
Do you remember that card?
That's when I was actually good at Magic. So yeah, I'm all about living in the past.
You actually played decks that could beat that card. I was like floundering around in the mid range where when they played that, it was just over.
Yeah, let's live in the 10-year, 11 years ago. I'm good with that, baby.
Yeah, let's do that. Seattle PTQs 2011.
Yes, please.
I played Naya.
Ugh.
That was a mistake.
Ugh. No, thank you.
That was a mistake. So that way I lost to decks like the ones that you played then, and I lost to ones that had Cruel Ultimatum.
Yeah, you found a way to lose to the whole spectrum.
Had it all. Okay, so interestingly, there was a Blood Chief's Thirst off the top of the library there for Jensen, though decided not to fire it off, which would have unleashed a potential attack here. You see the Cling to Dust has brought Jensen up to 5. Boy, a lot riding on that end of the story in hand here for Jensen.
Oh, yeah. So I think the thought process here is your Beanstalk Giant's going to attack. I'm happy to block with the Elder Gargaroth. Maybe make a 3/3, because that gives me another block, and that means I still got more time to mess around with Shark Typhoon and into the story and everything else. Clean the dust. So we are. It's getting interesting.
Boy, this has been a super interesting game. Really kind of showcasing what each deck is trying to do. Autumn, hit that key ramp spell, the Cultivate, on turn 3, and has been able to just apply massive pressure to Huey basically every single turn since then, and is continuing to do so now, where Jensen has the cheap, efficient answers, but needs to have every single one of them lined up exactly correctly, or we'll lose on the spot.
Yeah. I'm still really curious about that Terror of the Peaks turn. It's obviously hindsight, but the way that I looked at that turn was you're definitely resolving Fertile Footsteps, and then what thing are you playing that? Again, I assume that turn you're playing the card you care about the least because you're not expecting it to resolve, because if it resolves, you're going to win anyway. And it feels like Terror of the Peaks may have been stronger than Vivian. Now, Vivian's going to get countered because Vivian's also a strong card, but which card was better?
This is going to be really interesting as well, because Autumn actually has enough mana to fire off Genesis Ultimatum here if they'd like. And Huey would then be forced to play into the story and try to find a 2-mana counter with it. But no, it's actually going to be Stomp. And is this going to prompt into the story now from Jensen or no? Nope, going to take it. And then Bone Crusher Giant on the stack as well. This is about as close as it gets. Also of note, so there was no attack there by the Beanstalk Giant.
Yeah.
That must have been respecting a Thieves Guild Enforcer. Is that what was going on there?
Maybe. I mean, this game,
this is starting to turn very quickly back in Jensen's direction. Yeah. Make no mistake.
Because now we have Didn't Say Please for the Ultimatum. Yeah, I definitely think you want to draw a card. Okay, instead of getting the life.
Right. It's only 2 off of the Bone Crusher Giant trigger, so that would not be lethal itself, and you get to start smashing. Jensen's going to play it a little bit safe here and leave the Soaring Thought Thief back just in case. But here it comes. Genesis Ultimatum Didn't Say Please for the counter.
So wait, Dispute was literal perfect? Right? Because you dispute back and then you can pay for the dispute. So actual perfect draw step?
Wow, that's incredible. Let's see if Autumn can hit. The job's not done yet.
Oh, boy.
The perfect draw, but Genesis Ultimatum still needs to hit something to try to win right here and right now.
All right, we don't get to see what it is. We're being slow rolled a little bit here ourselves here in the coverage booth.
Let's see if there's a win hiding from this Genesis Ultimatum. The answer is...
tough to say. I mean, those are pretty good.
That does not kill the Soaring Thought Thief.
You can finish it off with the Bone Crusher in hand, though, with old Stomp.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're supposed to, but it's an option. Okay, so you swing in with Bone Crusher here. Gargaroth has to block. I guess the Gargaroth doesn't have to. It could be a Soaring Thought Thief, but sure. Gargaroth's going to block. Your, do you want life? Do you want a card? Card might be interesting.
That last sequence was incredible. You see Autumn very cleverly keeping Bone Crusher Giant in hand rather than putting it on the battlefield, which is going to allow getting this pesky Elder Gargaroth off the other side. Oh, there's a Drown block.
That was a good draw, maybe?
Yeah, where were you, Drown and Lock, when the Genesis Ultimatum was on the stack?
Yeah, no kidding.
So of course, the question that Jensen's thinking about now is, do I use this on the Bone Crusher Giant and save the Elder Gargaroth? Is that what's going to get me over the finish line here?
Yeah, but if you do that, you take 2 and you go to 1? Or yes. you could just say, okay, we trade. I have assuming the Drown the Lock is just on permanently. Okay, I have a Drown the Lock for a Beanstalk Giant.
Right.
And then I got to figure the rest out from there, but I've got a Slunday Vision to take a look. I got to cling to the dust in the bin. And I've got a Shark Typhoon in the grip. I mean, that might be enough to buy some time.
Boy, this has been one heck of a game from both of our players here. Autumn Burchett sequencing things beautifully. William Huey Jensen trying to find every answer possible. And both of them have been able to kind of answer each other, basically. Now, though, Autumn with a distinct lead here with 2 12-12s, the 1-2 Chainweb Arachnir, and now a 3-3 as well on the battlefield. It looks like it's got reach. So first of the Drown and the Locks is going to come out to kill the Beanstalk Giant.
Yep, that's totally fine place to start.
Yep. Oh, there's an Essence Scatter.
Okay.
So Shark Typhoon hard cast into at least a Salundi Vision at the minimum. And it looks like the Zagoth Triome is going to hit the battlefield here as well before passing the turn back. As things sit, this does leave Jensen alive, but barely.
Yeah, I mean he is boy, is he hanging on.
with so much mana available for Jensen, now he needs to try to find something like another end of the story to just reload, where Autumn Burchett is. There's so many spells from Autumn's list that would just win the game on the spot. And unfortunately for them, they found a land this turn, but they still have action with the Vivian plus the Bone Crusher Giant that's on an adventure. This will not be a turn where nothing happens.
Well, here comes a 3/3 shark.
Chad also points out that there's another Genesis Ultimatum on top of the library for Burchett. So no rest for William Huey Jensen. Going to go for a trade and a block.
Okay.
And this is a huge turn because that's the end of the story. And that could be the card that pulls him ahead in this game. We'll have to see what he hits. It's basically going to be end of the story versus Genesis Ultimatum. But the difference being that Jensen's at 2, right? And really has no wiggle room whatsoever, but has a Shark Typhoon to help stem the bleeding here. So, boy, this is going to be a close one. This game has been awesome, by the way.
Yeah, it's been really, really, really good.
Super sweet. Autumn's going to run out the Bone Crusher Giant and make a 3/3. How is Huey going to get out of this mess?
I mean, 3 of these threats are lethal.
Land off the top. So first things first, the party will get started with End of the Story.
Yep.
That will make a 7/7 shark. And draw, wow. Drown the Lock and 2 Soaring Thought Thieves is actually probably what Huey needed.
Well, Soaring Thought Thieves are blockers. Assuming that they are 3 power in combination, they can trade with some 3/3s.
Yeah. And then the Drown and Lock can kill the Beanstalk. Wow. And, you know, these Soaring Thought Thieves being able to block the Bone Crusher Giant's a big game as well.
Yep.
One interesting question is Jensen compelled to use the Drown and the Lock on a creature here, or could he possibly save it for the Genesis Ultimatum?
Boy, this is a game.
This is one heck of a game we've got on our hands here. I'll tell you what, I do not envy being in Autumn's seat here and trying to figure out combat after your Dimir Rogue's opponent just drew 4 cards. And they're checking out, what does it look like if I just attack with everything?
Well, you know what I would do.
I know what you would do.
Let's go. Let's go, baby. Send it in.
And Autumn agrees. Everything in the red zone for Autumn Burchett. Show me, says Autumn. So if we just run it out really quickly here, Thought Thief, block, go to 1.
Yep.
You still get to have Drown in the Lock available for the Genesis Ultimatum as well.
Or if there is no Genesis Ultimatum, which we obviously know there is, but Jensen doesn't know that, then, you know, end a turn, kill your Beanstalk Giant, or maybe not, or just say, you know, hold it, and we'll figure things out from there.
So trade, and chump, or the other way around, but there we go.
There you go.
He also is getting this Bone Crusher Giant off the battlefield so that you don't have to use an actual removal spell on it later. Having it die in combat is so much better here for Jensen. Down to 1 he goes. Chainweb Arachneer gets through, still has Beanstalk Giant to face down, and now Autumn has to, I guess, just run out the Genesis Ultimatum after the Vivian? Because, you know, it really does feel like the Shark Typhoon is going to make it so that if any type of spells happen, Jensen is going to be able to survive on the ground again. It's a land from Autumn Burchett, and Autumn has passed the turn to Huey. Did not put Genesis Ultimatum on the stack. Jensen says, fine, I'll just draw my card too then. Incredible. Another thing to keep in mind here, of course, is Cling to Dust is sitting there. And look at this. Jensen is going to attack now. That elk does have reach. So if Autumn chooses, they can protect the Vivian. And Autumn's down to 10.
I can't believe this game.
This game is absurd.
I cannot believe this game.
So sweet. Okay, Autumn has let Vivian die, but has kept the 3/3 on the battlefield, ready to rumble right now. This Cling to Dust is going to be huge for Jensen. Oh, and I just noticed the clock, Cedric. Autumn's down to 2 minutes, and Jensen's on just under 8. Now, that should be plenty of time for both players.
I was going to say for Jensen, yeah.
Well, like, I think that if this slips away from Autumn, then the clock isn't the problem, right? Like, I think that if that's the case, then Jensen will be able to just kind of pretty quickly close out the game with a Shark Typhoon. If Autumn's going to win this game, I think it's going to be in the next turn or two. And it looks like Jensen's lining up double Cling to Dust here. And if there's another creature to hit, then that would be 7 life and then another 1/1 to block with.
Mm-hmm. Wow. All right. We're hanging tough. You Jensen, he's hanging tough. All down to 3.
That Drown in the Lock, extremely important here for William Huey Jensen, as it's the only thing between this Genesis Ultimatum, which is a likely victory, and death.
Yeah, that Drown in the Lock is the full break in case of emergency. And what's interesting, too, now about this game, I can't believe this, but, like, it's conceivable that Jensen is just, like, 7 in the air, and then... and I like this, too. Oh, wait, hold on a second. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You pay. I drown it. So now I have 13 power?
So close. Still not enough, though, right?
11, 12. Yes, okay, so I can attack for 13. And then, okay, yeah, so that's it. Okay, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
So I think we're going to see Temple and Scry. No, Scry first, sorry. Oh, and it didn't say please on the top for William Huey Jensen.
Oh,
There's even a Drown in the Lock sitting there as well. That's exactly what he needed to lock this up. A hard counter against Autumn's list. He can counter anything that they could draw. And Jensen has somehow put himself in the winning position after this epic battle between these two MPL members. What an unbelievable game. This is
my God, an appeal? Genesis
and the full tease here for Autumn is they win another Genesis Ultimatum. But Jensen has the answer just barely with that didn't say please. Absolutely incredible game between these two players.
Wow.
Oh, man.
Billion times wow.
This game was incredible. Such high-level play from both of these MPLers. And ultimately, it was Jensen pulling ahead by the absolute narrowest of possible margins. Jensen spent multiple turns at 1 life.
So now you ship it in. 7/7 gets blocked. Okay, so he's going to ship it in this way. Okay, so 7/7 gets blocked. You block there.
Side.
Okay. Is there a draw for Burchett? There's an Arachnir in the graveyard, but
anything.
Say it again.
Assume the Drown in the Lock
covers anything.
All bases.
Yep.
Right? Like there's no. This is the weakness, of course, of ramp decks is that they are vulnerable to hard counters, where sometimes the control player just says, sure, like ramp all you want. I'm just going to counter the stuff that actually matters. And I think that's the case here as well.
Yeah, that's
and
game.
yeah, it's a
That's
couple of
game.
lands off the top for Autumn Burchett, and William Huey Jensen has found the victory here in incredible fashion. This was just an awesome game to watch from both perspectives. Both players playing at such a high level. Ultimately, though, it's a Hall of Famer, William Huey Jensen, who takes down the match.